So my name's Courtney Shealy. I'm a dancer with the American Ballet Theater. I'm in the Corps de Ballet, and I have been dancing with American Ballet Theater now for about 7 or 8 years now. Pretty crazy, including the ABT Studio Company. I'm originally from Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Shout out. And I trained at Northwest Florida Ballet Academy from third grade through actually my junior year of high school. So I was only there the whole time, and I was really lucky that that facility was there in my hometown. And then after about, I would say, a few years dancing, maybe in middle school, I was like, oh, I kind of like this. And in high school, one teacher was like, Courtney, I think you could do this as a career. And I actually almost joined Pittsburgh Ballet Theater, funny enough, in the graduate program or in the high school program that they have there. And then my teacher, Todd Allen, he was like, Courtney, I think you can aim higher. And if you don't get into that, your top places then go down to like smaller companies. And I was like, okay, yeah. And he's like, there's an audition for ABT Studio Company. And this was when I was 16 at the time. And he's like, it's next week, and I think you should fly to New York. And you can stay with, I have some teachers that were living here at the time in Queens. And thankfully, they let me stay with them. And I flew up and I auditioned. And then it was the summer intensive Stuco audition. And then after that audition, the studio company invited me back for a private audition. And then I came back like a month or two later. I auditioned with Studio Company for a week, and then I got in, and the rest is history. I moved here. I was with the Studio Company for about a year, and then I got promoted into the main company, and that was in 2015. Yeah, 2015.
That's amazing.
So,
I love that. I love hearing that you came from elsewhere and audition, because that's a big jump that a lot of dancers, I feel, can be intimidated by versus
yes.
going up the school and going up the ranks.
Yes, and I was really fortunate too that I was thinking I'd have to join maybe JKO or something before, and that year actually they only took me and one other girl from outside the school. So it was definitely a right place, right time kind of situation. It felt like so. So yeah, and now I'm living in New York, and I have a dog and named Rue, Corgi, if you follow me. And so that's pretty much where I'm at. I've also had, in the last 4 years, I've had 4 knee surgeries too, which is a big part of my story.
Yeah.
And I overcame a lot with that, starting in 2020. And that was a process of my left knee surgery, right knee surgery. I had many kneecap dislocations throughout my first career. And so I got it fixed during the pandemic. And now I'm dancing and I'm getting back, pretty much getting back to where I was. So yeah, that's also been a big part of my, I would say, dance story too, because injuries can be a lot also, like with diet and everything and mental health. So I always like to add that in, because a lot of dancers don't talk about injuries and such, or surgeries. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me about knee surgery specifically lately. So I wanted to preface that too. It's a big part.
Yeah. Actually, this comes at a great time because I'm working on a blog post about the shift of body image after surgery, which is like a whole nother conversation that I think we can dive into. But I do want to hone in a little bit on your injury recovery process post-surgery. And also having done that during a pandemic, right? So like you had like these two huge things happening that are limiting your ability to do something you love. We saw the negative implications of the pandemic on dancers' mental health, relationships with food, relationships with bodies. So we have that. And now we also have recovery from an injury. So can you talk about your experience through that time?
Yeah, definitely. It was a really terrible time, to be quite frank, but I'm really lucky for the support system I had, and the things that were supported. I guess, how do I say this? I was in a support group through AGMA that was with all these other dancers that weren't dancing. So I was kind of thrown in there as like, I'm not dancing because of the pandemic and because I'm going through this long surgical process. So I would say my recovery was really tough because I had my first surgery in 2020 in November, and then I wasn't walking. I was in a wheelchair for like 2 months. And then right when I was able to walk again, I had my other knee surgery. So it was pretty much 4.5 months, 5 months of just not walking. And that was a really dark time because I, as a dancer, I've been doing this for like 20 years, and we find our identities really tied in to dancing. So I felt like I couldn't really express myself, and also I like couldn't really distract myself well because I couldn't walk. But I really took it upon myself to, okay, I'm going to push myself with physical therapy. Also, I was taking all these supplements and eating really well. I was, doing therapy. I was in my support group. And it was just a really hard time. I had my friends, thankfully, actually during the pandemic, it kind of helped because all my friends were free that were here. So I was able to like get a lot of support from the people around me. But it was really difficult. It was a lot of physical therapy, baby steps, little victories, just being able to like, even do a plie for the first time was like a huge thing. And that was a whole process. And then I got through that first round. That was like major reconstruction. And then unfortunately my kneecap did dislocate again last December. So it was about over a year ago. And that was a whole different kind of recovery process because it wasn't in the pandemic. So it was interesting to see the difference, I guess, in both. So this one was more difficult, I would say, just because everyone was working again, and I could see, you get FOMO and the lack of motivation. Also, like, when it happens again, even like James Whiteside, he actually is going through something similar that I went through before. So definitely relatable. And it can be really difficult for dancers mentally, but it's just about taking it one day at a time and taking care of yourself. And yeah, I mean, my body image too, with that, it was interesting seeing my muscles all go away, and it was really heartbreaking. Even this last time when it happened again, just seeing my legs get so skinny from no muscle, and building that back was a big process of like, okay, I eat a lot of protein. I have to, I'm trying to build that muscle back. And, yeah, it was a really difficult process and hard time, but really thankful for my support system and, taking it one day at a time, really.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest takeaway that I'm getting is that you had to be very proactive about getting support through these two big sets of injury recovery periods. It's really interesting. As you're talking, I can really relate to the weird difference between being something like, for me it was actually pregnancy. So I had my son pre-pandemic 2017.
Right.
That pregnancy was like before COVID and everything, and your typical like first trimester, it's really hard because everybody's doing things and you can't really do things, and you don't really want to know you're pregnant yet, and it's like this really weird time. Then COVID hits and I'm pregnant with my daughter, and it was actually such an easier first trimester because nobody was doing anything, so I didn't have to like, I couldn't dance anyway. Like I was too tired, I was too exhausted, but there was nothing to do anyway. So that reminded me a little bit of that experience, how it's interesting. I think now, because we're back in our normal routines, you're more prone to experiencing FOMO if all of your friends are back in the studio and back working. And it sounds like for you, one of the key things that got you through this entire period was support, and was tuning into multiple avenues of support, from friendships to also professional resources.
Yeah.
Obviously physical therapy, but also mental health support as well, which is major.
Major mental health, and I'm still struggling with getting back too. I mean, it's still a mental battle just to even get back on stage. And I think especially dancers at this level, we don't really talk about how difficult it can be, you know, being, you know, you're an employee. So it's this kind of pressure you put on yourself. Okay, like I need to like pay my bills. I need to work, get back to work to survive. And I think mental health is really important to have resources to get through hard times. Like, you know, even getting back out there, it's like really scary still, and I still struggle with it. And that's like a process. You know, every time it gets easier and easier. But you know, it's those little victories of pushing and pushing, and knowing like, okay, I'm gonna go on stage and not get hurt, or like, okay, like it's I'm not trapped out here, I'm good, like, you know, this is a safe space. And yeah, because we all have trauma too, from like traumatic injuries especially. It can be very scary doing steps that you did, hurting yourself again. So yeah, definitely mental health, very important, and that's why it's good to have resources, and I'm very lucky that I have resources available. So yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about the first time you're back on stage after coming from an injury and that fear, and how you're navigating through that, because that's a very
Yeah.
specific experience that I'm curious if we can
Hmm.
tap into a little bit.
Yeah, funny enough, I would say going back to dance the first time was easier than it was this time. And it's because, you know, when I got back out there the first time, I was like, oh, like my knees are fixed. It's not going to happen again. So I'm going balls to the walls, like, woo, going crazy on stage and everything. And then when I got hurt last December, I was like, oh my God. So now I can't really say that. And funny enough, when I did my first show, it was during the summer, and I was just doing a walk-on role. I wasn't even dancing. I was just walking on stage in Giselle in a costume, just to like get used to getting out there, which I'm really grateful I was able to do that process. And I can't even tell you, I was like shaking. I was so scared and nervous. And I think it's like this time it was just a whole new process of getting back out there. Just because I couldn't really tell myself like, oh, it's not going to happen again, because it did happen again. And it, it's just, it's like a battle.
Yeah.
But every time you push, it's like exposure therapy, really. That's what it is. So every time you push yourself a little bit, it gets easier and easier and easier. And then, you know, even little victories like doing my first dancing role on stage, or even recently I did Swan Lake, and like just getting to, and I didn't even do act 2 actually this run, just because I did everything else, because we do like 8 different parts, so it's crazy. But it, you know, just getting up back out there doing like ballet rolls on point, and it's just like a whole building process. And I think last time I really rushed back into it, and this time I'm really taking my time and being aware of, you know, how I'm feeling. And thankfully, like, the artistic staff are great at ABT, and they're all dancers and they get it. So it's just taking my time, making sure I'm strong enough to do these things, not to get like injured in other ways. Just being very mindful. So it's a really slow process. It can be.
Yeah, it sounds like the second time around is really forcing you to take a much more mindful approach
Hmm.
as you're actually getting back into the groove of dancing. And I think that's something that a lot of the dancers who listen to these conversations can hear. It's
Hmm.
almost, I love having these conversations because you're almost giving me, evidence to show these dancers that, like, hey, maybe not pushing yourself too heavily is actually, like, it's clearly not going to help. Like,
Right.
you're gonna be at risk for overcompensating, number
Hmm.
one. You're going to be at risk for overuse, and it's likely not going to be worth the potential for a re-injury, which is really what I'm hearing from you. And being
Right.
forced to have that more mindful approach now, even while you're on stage, it sounds like with every movement you're going into it with more mindfully.
Yeah, definitely. And it's all about seeing where I'm at, and, you know, just trying to be in the present, and also, you know, just being very, very mindful of my body, and having grace with myself. Like, if I'm, you know, there's so many people that come back from injuries, or like major injuries, and then they hurt something else. And it's just making sure I'm strong enough, and I'm, you know, I am getting used to, even my stamina is getting back. And it just is a process. And I think people that rush into it, which I've seen even in the company, people that come back really quickly, they get hurt again, or it's a new injury. And I think it's just about being very aware of your body, and knowing when to call things like, okay, I think I'm gonna like take it easy today. You know, it really takes a lot of, it's hard. As dancers, we always want to please and push and be like, okay, yes, of course I can do this. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that's how I was the first time when I was coming back from my knee surgeries. But this time I'm like, you know what? I don't think I should do that.
Yeah.
Or I think I need to pace myself better. I need to maybe take it easier today so I can push more tomorrow. It's all about being very mindful so you know how to push your body. And also with aging too, like, you know, it's important because I want to have a long career and like a good healthy body, not like push now and then like, you know, have more injuries and all that. So
Yeah, you literally took the words out of my mouth. The next
mhm.
thing I was going to say was, you know, with age, I think we feel it more than ever.
Right.
Just with age, we feel the requirement in order to allow us to sustain our dancing, we
Mhm.
have to start thinking differently. And again, just going back to, you know, one of the reasons why I love having these conversations is because we learn so much with experience. And I always say I want dancers to empower others with their experiences. I just also want our younger generations of dancers to be smarter, right? And understand
Mhm.
that getting back slow and steady, there's nothing wrong with that. And if anything, it's going to help you to really flourish for longer.
For sure. I mean, longevity is the goal,
Yeah.
and this is such a short-lived career. So it's important to take care of ourselves. And also burnout too is a whole
Yeah.
thing. And like just it's so important to like take your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And going into the conversation a little bit about food in
Mhm.
regards to oftentimes when I'm working with dancers, there's a major shift that happens between being full force in our dance schedules in performance or competition season versus when we are either away from the studio, whether it be because of a layoff, whether it be because of an injury, recovery, whatever it might be, holiday. This major difference of knowing that we need to tune in very proactively to fueling our body versus now having more time being away from the studio, able to have a more intuitive approach. I am curious to hear the shifts and differences that you've experienced just being several times in these two different places, like
Mhm.
within your career.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to have a good balance. It's all about
Yeah.
balance. And for me, I've always been the dancer that will eat whatever I want kind of thing. As long as, you know, because we're burning so much when I'm performing. Like, for example, this last one, like, I was, you know, dripping sweat all the time, you know, and I think some people have this misconception, even like this just happened, like someone's like, oh, you guys don't eat, or like it's like, no, it's the opposite. Like I actually eat like a ton.
Yeah.
And I think it's about like for when I'm dancing, I'm more mindful of maybe like I eat a lot more carbs if I'm doing like Swan Lake, for example. Like I'm eating like I'm not really like, it's not like I'm mindful about if I'm eating carbs and if I'm having protein. Those are the two things, especially with my knee coming in like this last tour, because just with my muscle, I want to make sure like it's rebuilding properly and also carbs for my stamina. But
Yeah.
I would say like like for example, after a show, I'll eat a whole pizza or like, you know, I have ice cream every night. Throughout the day too, if we were having like a double show day, I eat a lot of snacks during the show even. I always eat a lot of bananas because my legs cramp, like things that actually help me.
Yeah.
But versus like, let's say I'm off right now and, you know, I let's say for example, yesterday I was out and I got a breakfast sandwich, and I got like mac and cheese. Like, you know, I'm more leisurely. I'm not
Sure.
really aware. You know, I love ice cream. I'm telling you, I'm such I am, you can ask anybody. Also, like funny things, I love Chick-fil-A. So my funny uh like quirk, I guess, about me is like I'm a Chick-fil-A fanatic. So usually like if I'm off, I'll be like, or if I'm having like a bad, oh, I want my Chick-fil-A, so I'll get a chicken sandwich. So I think when I'm working really hard and performing, I'm more mindful about like, oh, I should probably eat like pasta or something or
Sure.
have something. But when I'm off, I'm just more of, oh, I want like something to make my soul happy. So I like, you know, so yeah, I would just say I'm more like conscientious about maybe fueling my body better when I'm working really hard and pushing myself just so my muscles and my body can like run better versus if I'm being lazy and I want to chill.
I get it. It's truly a testament to exactly what I was referring to. When we are performing, we need to be very proactive about getting more in, essentially,
Yes.
right? Getting more carbohydrates, getting more protein-rich, even fat-rich dishes to support stamina, to support energy. I can't even tell you how many dancers I hear from who tell me once we start to focus more on eating more during the day, and it's not that they're intentionally restricting during the day. It's just that they're so busy that they end up not eating enough. So when we have that more intent behind our food choices, when we are in performance or competition season, we end up feeling more energized throughout our performance, versus when you are not performing, you can have that more intuitive, more leisurely approach as you said it. So that's fabulous. Courtney, I'm curious to hear about, now that you are, kind of getting back into the groove of things, how are you still channeling balance throughout your day? We spend so much time in the studio. You are doing a lot of work in your own recoveries, but any other hobbies and things that you enjoy that help to bring some balance into your day?
I mean, yeah, you can. So other hobbies, I'm obsessed with my dog. So I'm really into dog training stuff. And I love my dog. So I love taking her on super long walks. I actually, on the side too, I do dog walking sometimes. I do that on layoffs. I've actually been thinking about maybe doing it right now because we're off, but I'm on WAG and I will go and
I
walk
love
people's
that.
dogs. It's something I really enjoy doing. I love animals, and especially dogs have my heart. And I love being around other people's dogs. So I will walk dogs sometimes, or even, that's like the outdoorsy thing. But then I also love spending time with friends, and I'm really lucky at ABT. I have like a lot of my friends work there, so we do stuff outside. I like to watch TV. Obviously, obsessed with Netflix. Who isn't? I think it's just a good balance because I think I used to be very obsessed with ballet. And I think it was healthy for me with my knee surgeries in a way to get perspective that my whole identity isn't ballet.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of dancers have a hard time, and this I did too, just separating like, oh, like ballet isn't life, and it is an important aspect, but it's not like we're doing brain surgery or anything. And I think we can lose the joy of it. So I'm trying to like also refocus it as like, this is something I like to do. It's my job, but I'm also like more than just dance and my identity. And also like knowing non-dancers too has been really helpful, and having relationships with I call them muggles or mortals, lol, but
I love
non-dancers is
that.
really, really helpful, and like has a lot of perspective, uh, and like, oh, like, life, and maybe, this isn't the end of the world, kind of things, that things, happen in rehearsals, or even like, injuries. So yeah, I think it's all about getting a good balance. But
Yeah.
yeah, I call them muggles, which is so funny. People always emphasize, because
I
uh,
love that. I think that's perfect. Bringing in perspective is so important,
mhm,
especially when we do tend to hyper focus. And, the younger dancers, of course, are going to do that. And I think that there is something to be said about that perspective coming with age.
right,
But when you do find it, when you do identify it, there's no doubt that it helps to bring us more of that longevity
yeah,
with our dancing, for
for sure,
sure, right?
for
Reducing the risk of burnout,
mhm,
especially.
for sure.
Well, you kind of answered it already, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. It's the final question that I'd
Mhm.
love to ask, and it's pretty general. So, how would you redefine what it means to be the healthy dancer?
Oh, I would say having a good balance
Yeah.
of life outside and life in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, this happens to me still. Like, if I'm having a bad rehearsal day, or like, let's say there's like a role that I want to do, and I'm like not performing it, and like, or like, let's say casting changes, it still happens, and it can be really discouraging, and it can be hard when we're, hungry to do, to dance and everything. but I think getting a good perspective of, okay, like, you know, it might not be now, or, you know, I have a life outside of here, you know, this isn't the end of the world. You know, let me reset tonight and go back tomorrow,
Mhm.
and doing things for myself that make me happy that isn't ballet is so important, or doing things, you know, like even going to the, like even this morning I went on a walk with my dog to the Riverside Park right here, and it just like totally like I was like, okay, let me breathe. And it's just doing things for you to find a good balance, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It doesn't
Yes.
have to be expensive. It doesn't
No,
have
like going
fancy.
outside, taking a walk.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Just finding that time away from dancing, because ballet, just the way it is, it's always going to be very consuming. It kind of has to be consuming,
Right.
right? That's just the nature of it. But it doesn't mean that we can't find other activities, experiences that won't even help us bring it into the studio.
Yeah.
So, Courtney, thank you so much. This was so fabulous, and you
Yeah.
shared wonderful, grounded advice for us.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. Yeah, it was so nice to do this.
Yeah, so we will be in touch, okay?
Okay. Thank you so much. It was so
You're
nice to talk to
welcome.
you.
Have a good
Yeah, you
day.
too. Bye, everybody.
Bye.